I'm Jim Czek.
And I'm Renee Merrifield.
We're here with Beyond the Ballot and the rubber about to meet the road. That's the kind of the headline of our show today. And that is Parliament about to sit. They're going to sit for a total of 73 days this year. Tough schedule, eh?
Yeah, you can definitely feel the energy shift, and summer's over, and we're starting to see things come back to fruition. We've got Poilievre back in his seat as an MP in the House and as the leader of the official opposition. You're going to see a different heat on Carney than you saw in the spring. Don't get me wrong, Andrew Scheer did a great job as House leader and also as the acting leader of the opposition in Parliament, but it's going to be a different heat and a different attention that Poilievre will command by the press gallery, and already every time Poilievre speaks, it's really him being covered, and then Carney on the defensive, and the foreign worker policy was no different. He comes out saying, we need to get away from the foreign worker policy, and then Carney's being asked at his next press conference what he would be doing, and he's very much defending it. I have to say, if you're not watching and if you're not seeing the different social media campaigns, great job by the Conservatives jumping on that, predicting it, and having Carney as the Governor General of the Bank of Canada back, saying we need to do away with the foreign worker program, and then as Prime Minister saying, no, we really need to keep it. Very, very sly, and just showing how he's talking out of both sides of his mouth.
What I found extremely troubling, what he said, when I travel around the country, two things come to mind from people. And, it's the tariffs, and the other one is how people think it's so important to keep the temporary foreign workers program. So who's he talking to? Corporations? Because it's not the people that can't get a job, right? So you have to be talking to the corporations that want cheap labor and to exploit cheap labor.
And Jim, I could not have said it better myself. I mean, honestly, there is a need. And I want to be really careful. Even Poilievre's policy excludes those for farming because that is such a short burst. It's not full-time employment. It's not year-round employment. Those jobs are difficult for Canadians to really make ends meet on because they are so short in duration. But everything else, like where you have the Tim Hortons, assistant manager role for $37 an hour, it is a permanent job. You got to put that into perspective. That's $75,000 a year. Someone can live on that wage, and for that to be given to a foreign worker because they can't find someone locally, that just seems absurd to me, especially when we have unemployment rates in the 20% for some of those youth. It seems like a perfect job for a young upstart.
And I know many people personally that have started in fast food joints as 16-year-olds and ended up owning a franchise. So and been assistant managers at 17 and all that kind of stuff. So we know that Canadian youth are more than capable and willing to do that kind of work, especially for those dollar amounts. There's a lot of talk on social media that there's some kind of kickback going on, a $40,000 payment up front and all kinds of stuff. And I've heard that even in the agriculture industry here in town, but nobody wants to talk. So, I mean, we're trying to track down some of that stuff, but, until you can prove it.
I haven't heard about kickbacks happening, that especially in the foreign workers. A lot of our farming community, they've had the same foreign workers coming year after year after year, and have developed a relationship with them. We're talking, foremen and forewomen who have, 12 years that have been coming out, sacrificing that time away from their families for that 5 months of duration to really come and support the farming community here. So I haven't heard about that, but I did see all over social media just, one after another, basically disproving what Carney was saying. That's not a good place to be starting a new session. And especially when the honeymoon, time should still be there. We are seeing his ratings drop. So while they are still high, we're definitely seeing some of that come off of the halo. And I do think that this session is going to be particularly difficult for Carney in that if he doesn't show some sort of progress, it's going to be game over. Canadians are needing to see a shift or a change. The numbers coming out, whether it's the GDP numbers or whether it's The jobs numbers, housing numbers are not looking any better. And then the negative press that they're getting over the immigration numbers that just were released, they're taking a lot of heat on a lot of different files, and there is no reprieve right now. There is no magic bullet or vision beyond what we're seeing today.
In a surprise move, David Eby came out against the Temporary Foreign Workers Program as well, and saying that, that it's, I mean, I interviewed him, I think it was last year sometime, and he said at that point the immigration policy of the Liberals was daft. He used the word daft. And I mean, you can't continue to bring in more people than the system can handle. And then you probably know her, Katrina Chen, the former NDP minister, coming out furious at Eby over the Premier's opposition to the foreign worker scheme. And, she's saying, this is the part that I don't get. She says that, it's the government's fault that brings in all these people and they're not prepared for it. But I'm saying, like, that's exactly the point. Our system is not capable of bringing in that many people. Healthcare, housing, all these things. She answers the question herself. But she says that she points the finger at immigrants, at the government instead of the immigrants for the flawed policies. Yeah, the flawed policy is allowing that many immigrants in without a system that can take it.
Yeah, Katrina Chen, I mean, I couldn't get more disingenuous than what she is. I served alongside her for 4 years. I hardly saw her in the House. I think she might have been inside the House a total of 2 months out of 4 years. She chose to stay at home and Zoom in virtually, and basically held zero post and was offline for almost the entire last year and a half. I understand that there are personal circumstances, but if personal circumstances preclude you from doing your job as an MLA, I think you should step aside. My personal thoughts aside, I don't know why people are giving her a microphone other than she was part of the NDP caucus and they're trying to create some drama between NDPers. But really it's kind of I came here as an immigrant, but nobody else should come here as an immigrant, kind of a thought. I mean, I'm looking at her and I'm thinking to myself, that far and no more, that it just makes no sense at all, other than, she's getting some great press time right now. And maybe that's her sole motive, is to keep her name in the media so that she can have some sort of future in politics. But suffice to say, it's not a very intelligent position. It's not one that's well thought out. And I can see David Eby taking this tact. He's been very critical of the Liberal government on their immigration policy, as you mentioned. But the other thing is that the NDP are very pro-union. They're very pro, kind of the little guys. And this would be, case in point, and protecting those lower jobs. If you think of like even a hospital, all of the unionized jobs are kind of management and below. There's no management jobs in a union. Management, as soon as you get into management, you're outside of the union. So it's really protecting those lower income jobs and really saying, we need to keep everyone employed. This is though, for David Eby, it's turning a spotlight on himself, and it's a weird one to pick, because really what's going to happen is that it opens him to saying, to showing how few private sector jobs have been created, and the Conservatives were all over that in really attacking some of what he was saying.
Yeah, let's switch gears a little bit to housing, an area you know very well. And Pierre Poilievre, you and I talked about during election. We did the election coverage, and we did that election night, and we compared the two housing. That was one of we spent a little bit of time there. We compared the two housing plans from the Conservatives to the Liberals. And Pierre Poilievre has come back out and says, steal my ideas, because we need it. Because he said, since the Liberals, since 2024, GTA, Greater Toronto Area, housing starts down 49%, the City of Toronto down 65%, Vancouver down 5%, Kelowna down 36%, and on and on and on. And then obviously, Home Builders Association reports that 35% of builders surveyed have already begun layoffs. Realtors, mortgage brokers, steel and lumber workers now all facing job losses because of the collapse in building.
Yeah, and I was out tweeting on this as well. The jobs numbers, there's a significant number of those jobs that were actually from the construction industry. And, I said this last week, we need to sound the alarm bell. This is when the housing industry starts slowing down, it has far greater reach than just units that get produced and, homes that get produced. It's actually also jobs that are lost. And we need to start really thinking about this. We've begged and pleaded to build momentum in this sector. And with the policies that are currently in place, the sector is slowing down and we're seeing it grind to a halt. I hate to say it, but you can go back and listen to as many speeches as you want. Go to Hansard at bcgov.org, and like literally all you have to do is Google my name on Hansard or search my name on Hansard and housing, and you will find me over and over and over again saying the policies that are being put in place will grind this industry to a halt, and you will see housing starts go down, not up, and that is exactly what is happening. And I hate that my prediction was true and was accurate, but I will say it again, unless we see policy changes, we will not see the housing industry come back to life. Carney's plan doesn't do that. And we're seeing, whether it's ICBA or whether it's the Canadian Home Builders or whether it's UDI, they're all coming out against the policies that have been put in place with Carney. They're saying, get out of the way, don't introduce more. And Carney's plan to basically become a developer is very odd. We're not short of developers. We're not even, short of contractors. What we're short of are laborers. We're short of suppliers. We're short of, of contractors. But we are desperately overwhelmed with bureaucracy. We are desperately overwhelmed by the amount of red tape that we go through and the costs that are layered upon layered upon layered onto the development industry. So I don't know how else to say it. Carney's plan does not look like it will be a success. I don't know who he had advising him, but truly this is not the path forward. And I'll say, like, Poilievre's plan for housing is one where he is removing bureaucracy, removing red tape, removing costs, and actually trying to stimulate that market moving forward. But until we see pre-sales return, we're not going to see the market return. And CMHC changes have basically rendered purpose-built rentals dead in the water. So we're going to see a huge plummet in those numbers as well.
Yeah, so his plan, and we talked about this during election, it axed the federal sales tax on all new homes under 1.3 million. And that we talked about the comparison between Carney's plan and Poilievre's plan is Carney is just for first-time home buyers, and most first-time home buyers, everybody knows that, don't buy new builds, right? Because there's more risk involved because you're waiting for it to get built and all that stuff, the financing, all that stuff. And it's cheaper to buy lots of times a smaller unit, a condo, or as you move up into the thing. But single-family homes typically are bought by people upgrading their homes. So that plan is more just like a podium pitch, whereas this one says that we're going to cut the taxes on all new homes. The second one is to tie infrastructure federal to home building. And that means if you don't build so many homes, you lose some of the money, which is incentivized municipalities, which we know it's been a problem. I know that there's some developments here in Kelowna when they didn't want to free up land for single family home development when they were trying to push people into condos. And then the other one, cut building taxes by 50%. And that's another one, you know that very well. How much taxation and non-value added goes into a home, even permits and all that stuff, and the red tape, and you talk about DCCs, all that kind of stuff that just does not add value to the homeowner.
Yeah, and just for real numbers, in the city of Vancouver, a condominium unit of any size, it doesn't matter what size it is, whether it's 350 square feet or 2,000 square feet, but a condominium unit, just the costs of, and not townhouse, nothing larger than a condominium, but it's about $175,000 goes to community amenity charges and DCCs. That is an exorbitant amount of money. And if people realized that the first $300,000 of that, $750,000 condominium was just fees and taxation that is being levied by municipalities and government, I think that people would be more upset. People see developers as the villains, but developers don't make larger margins. The margin is the margin, and it's basically dictated by the financial institutions. If you can't make the margin, you're not going to make a project move forward. If anything, developers are very motivated to lower prices, not to see prices go up, because they want to sell and sell quickly. So I don't see I don't see government changing that, and definitely not under Carney. It's going to be a Poilievre government that's going to, take that more to heart.
Yeah, if governments are serious about building housing, I think, Paul, you have some really great advice, and you and I have said it as well. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Yeah, and just and stop with the ridiculous amount of taxation and all the other regulations that really add to building a home. But the big one, and we talked about this during election night, the rocket fuel that I still think is like the biggest piece of rocket fuel is get rid of the capital gains tax if that money is reinvested into Canada. Like, get that, because then people are sitting on a bunch of capital gains, apartment buildings, whatever. Let them sell them and then reinvest that money in Canada, because that's one of the main ingredients that Canada is missing right now is investment capital.
And until we have an equal playing field with the U.S., you're going to see a flee of capital. You're going to see capital going to where they can make more money and not have as much of it taxed. And that's just a reality. So, some people are like, no, then keep the taxes high here because that will get us more money. It's like, no, it will get you no money. It will get you no money because that money leaves and goes to the U.S. So it's it really is a misnomer or a misunderstanding to think that by taxing those capital gains that it's going to keep money here. It's just the opposite. One of my investors just recently let me know that he's going to liquidate and taking all money offshore. He's not going to handle, he's not going to abide by Canadian taxes anymore. That's huge. I mean, that we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of investments that he would have, and basically is taking a walk.
Yeah, Ian has put in a question here. Wouldn't increasing supply via Poilievre's policy ultimately bring prices down? And I'll let you answer that question, though.
Sorry, you'll have to say it again. I don't have the chat open
He's
here.
saying if Poilievre gets his ways and it increases supply, wouldn't that ultimately bring down prices of homes?
Yes, but isn't that the point? I mean, which one of us would be sad if, I shouldn't say that. If anyone is going to feel sad about a 40% increase eroding back down to a 10% increase from 2020 to 2022 was when we saw a 40% increase in housing pricing. It eroded back down to a 10%, in 2025, 2026. If anyone would see that as like, oh, the sky is falling, I'm sorry, that is so short-sighted. If we do not get our housing policy in line with our incomes and with our, with our careers, we are literally going to see an entire generation lost. So it is absolutely the point that we want to see some of this crest coming off of the housing market. It's not sustainable, and it hasn't been sustainable for many years. So would I like to see it? Yes. Do I want to see it moderated? Absolutely. Should we be at the 2 to 5% of an increase every year? Sure. Have something that's very healthy. But should we be seeing 10 and 20 and 40%? Absolutely, unequivocally not. And that is showing the signs of unhealth within our immigration policy and with our housing market, that we simply are not delivering enough units in time.
I would add to that, what we have right now is stagnation. We have people sitting on their hands. Buyers don't want to buy. Sellers don't want to sell. So we have stagnation. We have a bunch of youth that need homes. And if you have a booming economy, things just kind of fuel themselves. But when you have a stagnant economy, people are scared to buy, scared to spend. And that's what we have right now, a lot of stagnation.
Well, and it's, I'm looking back, and the same house, that was sold back in 2017, 2018, is almost double in price. That just doesn't make any sense. It's not double in value. It's just double in price. But where we have, cities taking, their huge amounts of DCCs, every time those increase, every time the province increases bureaucracy, every time, we see the policies shift or change, it's increasing the value of every house. It's not just the value of new houses. So we have to stop the madness, and we have to get right policy that's actually going to see our housing market come and fall in line with where jobs are today.
Yeah, and we got a letter here from one of the local builders, an award-winning builder as well, saying that, it's really tough out there, and, all the regulations, including the energy step code, lateral bracing code, accessibility codes, all these things are just adding cost to homes, and a lot of times the home buyer, it doesn't even know, like, just like, what does it really make a difference to me? And all they're seeing is it's just again more stagnation. It's just harder and harder to justify the cost, right? Because the people don't get to see the value in that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking. When was the last time you saw an earthquake or a house fall down in an earthquake anywhere in BC? When was the last time you saw a windstorm that took out any structure in BC? And the cost additives are in the, we just built two single family homes in which these new structural changes added $40,000 to $50,000 per house. That is astronomical to prevent something that simply is so far out there that it's not a reality. But we're doing that over and over and over again with our building code. And the builder that you talked about, Authentic, they are an award-winning builder. They're absolutely outstanding quality. Scott's known for that. And where he's drawing the line is saying, like, all of this is adding cost. And at what point are the buyers getting the short end of the fuzzy end of the lollipop? And it's now. Nobody sees a tangible difference in their energy bills from step code 1 to step code 3. But what they do see is a house that is $40,000 more expensive, if not more than that. Step code 3 to step code 5, you're going to see $100,000 added to every single home. And that was confirmed when I was in an estimates debate with the Minister of Environment, in which he said it's going to add 10 to 12% to the cost of every single structure that's built in BC. That is an astronomical cost. And when we talk about environmental efficiencies, here's where the rubber hits the road. If we saw, megatons of reduction, that would be great. But the minister actually said that over a 10-year time frame, they hoped to gain about 0.8 of a megaton. To see, 10 to 12% of an increase in housing costs over the course of the next 10 years for 0.8% or 0.8 of a megaton is just absolutely irresponsible and, a horrible waste of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, especially young people, $40,000 makes the difference between being able to buy a home and not buy a home, right? I mean, it's just huge. And the other thing that, just an example here in Kelowna, I remember if you wanted to build a carriage home, when they're talking about we need more homes, we need more housing. A carriage home, I think the permit used to be, and I'm going to guess these numbers, $2,500, and the province said that's not enough. You got to charge more, and they switched it to like $25,000 for a permit to build a carriage home.
It wasn't just the permit, it's that you now have to pay DCCs on an additional house on that street. So even though there's no capacity that's being increased, it's not like they're like actually building anything on the street to increase, the pipe flow. You're still paying, and you're still paying for that new house. The other thing that they were requiring are frontage upgrades. So on a, let's call it what you wanted to have as an affordable, portion of an addition, you're now looking at, anywhere from $100,000, like $50,000 for the DCCs, and, another $50,000 for your, for your upgrades to your frontage. That's a hard nut to swallow on, something that's supposed to cost you $150,000 to build.
And more codes, more regulations means more inspections, which means more costs, right?
And more professionals. Right now, they're enforcing a part of the building code that's the fire code during construction. We have to get a whole different code consultant to come in and give us guidance and get, sign off from the fire department, et cetera. These are huge costs, and every single thing adds. And so it's a very difficult environment. One of our executives just said, I've never in my entire duration in development and land and real estate have seen as many headwinds as we have today.
Well, this is a big shift. This is a massive shift by the Liberals from existential threat to climate threat. Remember when Justin Trudeau, it was only a few months ago, said that, you shouldn't be complaining about can't pay your rent, can't afford groceries and that kind of stuff, because the most important thing is climate. That is the most important thing. You shouldn't be stressing about those other things. And now here we have Mark Carney coming out and says he switched from existential threat to we need to just be climate competitive, which is, what does that do to the people that kind of really went all in on this existential threat and, alienated their family members, all that stuff, and, calling people climate deniers, doing all these things? Now all of a sudden the Liberals have switched gears. And we're seeing it with the media too. They're kind of losing their mind because, that was their focus. Now they have to switch to this climate competitiveness.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a little bit vague as well. I'm a little concerned that we don't really understand what climate competitiveness means. He still has a number of ministers in his caucus that are very much in that camp of climate alarmists and climate activists. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when the rubber hits the road, and what happens when we actually see, that policy unveiled. What I will say is that he's an economist, and when he starts seeing $4 billion of ferry, purchases going to a country that doesn't have the same climate action as what we have here, and the same industrial carbon tax as what we have here in Canada and in BC, I think that he's going to take heed. And if we don't get competitive, we're going to be in a world more trouble than we are today, because it's going to continue to erode our industries.
Yeah, one thing's for sure, Mark Carney is intelligent enough to recognize what's going on, whereas Justin Trudeau could have just, been so focused on whatever he was focused on, and himself mostly, that he ignored what was actually going on with the economy. Remember, he said famously, "I don't worry about the economy," and that much was obvious, right? That much was obvious.
He also thought budgets were going to balance themselves. So, I won't speak to his intellect, but I will say that he definitely had somebody or some people in his ear directing him to the level of activism that he held. And I think that Carney is smart enough to know that you don't make money and you don't build an economy on virtue signaling. And I think that we need to get very serious very quickly on creating an economic future for Canada.
You and I talked about this relentlessly as well, and we both drive electric vehicles. We said the EV mandate must come to an end. And, we were just wondering, when are you going to end it? Like, it's obvious they had to end it, but now they're just kind of like pausing it. That's just a nice way to say, well, we're ending it. But, now they're backpedaling and media losing their mind, just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, how can we do this? And then,
But if I was the NDP or if I was the BC Conservatives, I'd be getting ready to hammer the NDP on this very point, because once again, BC and the NDP under Josie Osborne put forward an EV mandate accelerator that actually accelerated past what Canada's EV mandate was. And I think that this is a very dangerous place for BC. I think it's very short-sighted. And I think if BC doesn't pull it back, I think you're going to have a lot of angry car purchasers going to Alberta to actually get their needs met.
Yeah, I can remember when I interviewed David Eby we asked about the carbon tax, and he said he would drop it if the feds dropped it. So if I get access to him again, I'll ask the same question: why haven't you dropped it, and when will you drop it? Because you're right, people are just going to look for alternatives, or just stop buying cars here in British Columbia. They'll be buying the used market or whatever, because it's very punishing for the manufacturers as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So an EV sales dropped, and again, Melanie Joly answer. You have to go watch. They're quite entertaining when she answers the questions. But Quebec is one of the leaders for EV sales in Canada, and they saw in Q2 they saw 38% decline. BC at 27% decline PEI, and BC is like the second highest adoption rate. And then, PEI 30%. So we've seen these things drop because they took the incentives off, right? But an industry can't run on incentives forever. The government can't afford to prop up every industry.
No, but I think it just shows how weak the market actually was and how weak the market demand was. Even when I went in and bought my EV, it was basically because my payment was less than the gas one that I was looking at. And it was only because there were so many different incentives that were offered by the manufacturer at the time. Until those cars come down in price and they're equalized, I don't see that changing. The other thing that we have to do is we have to get more infrastructure. Yes, Tesla has been very aggressive about getting infrastructure, but as other EV manufacturers have come to to take their places. I think that we have to see the charging stations increase, and you have to be able to literally pull off the road and and get a charge in the same way that you would fill up with gas, and we're just simply not there yet. But even if we had all the chargers, you already know that there are certain chargers that you go to and they don't work. They don't have enough power going to them to actually charge your vehicle in a timely fashion. So without enough infrastructure, we're not going to have it. And, we've seen BC Hydro say over and over again that they don't have enough electricity for the electrification goals of that have been set. So I think this whole, whether it's Clean BC, whether it's the EV mandates, we have to see those really take a backseat to our economy, to people feeding their kids, and to making ends meet. And right now, this government needs to focus on bigger priorities than what this is right now.
I think the government that proposes these EV mandates needs to get a map of Canada with the weather overlay on top of it as well, and recognize that yes, Lower Mainland, great for EVs, even Kelowna, great if you're staying in here, but a lot of Canada, not so great, right? And you and I both drive EVs. We know that, the guys in PG, the guys in Fort St. John and High Level Alberta and all these different places, Thompson, a lot tougher. The infrastructure is not there, number one. And then plus, obviously the EVs are affected by the climate, and that's an obvious truth. And then just the distance, the different distance between Thompson, when you drive to Winnipeg, there's not a lot of infrastructure between Thompson and Winnipeg in that whole province, right? Same thing, Prince George, when you drive into, Kamloops, right? There's not a lot in the 100-mile house, 150-mile house. And then when you go north, Clearwater, sometimes there's 300-400 kilometers between towns. Get a map. Right.
And it's just not there. I mean, I think I've told the story before, but, when I was in debate on that bill, one of the things that I brought to bear was a dealership that was in Dawson Creek that was applying to BC Hydro for a charging station. And BC Hydro wrote back and said, I'm sorry, but we don't have enough to have the service that you require. So you're going to have to power with renewables or diesel. And I'm thinking to myself, in Dawson Creek, you're telling them to use solar, like where they have like 5 hours of daylight, at certain times of the year. Like that is the most ridiculous thing ever. And there's no way you could charge a car or a vehicle on a solar panel of any nature. So it doesn't make sense yet. And until it makes sense, you're not going to see the price come down. And until the prices come down and there's enough infrastructure. And I mean, even when I went into the dealership, they were like, do you suffer from range anxiety? And I'm like, you actually have a name for it, range anxiety. And I'm like, I do suffer from range anxiety because I will take my husband's F-150 across the Coquihalla because if I got stuck, if it was like the fires the other day and I was trying to make it through, do I trust my EV? No, I don't yet. There's a lot that's not proven on them. So it would be far more, expeditious and easy for me to get to the Lower Mainland with a gas vehicle than it would be on an electric sometimes.
I sometimes think that policymakers don't see past themselves. I remember Chrystia Freeland saying, well, I don't even have a car. I ride my bike. And Jagmeet Singh says, I ride my bike. Stephen Guilbeault thinks nobody should ride anything other than a bike. But they live in very urban centers, and
they're ministers. They're ministers
enjoy chauffeur-driven limousines.
Drivers. They have drivers with cars, big Escalades. Come on, it's so disingenuous.
And they, and enjoy large salaries, and they don't have to get their kids to hockey and to soccer and to get groceries, all that kind of stuff. And I've lived in Thompson, Manitoba, 50 below.
I'm going to take it one step further. They don't have tools in their truck that they have to take to a job site. These are vehicles. These are utility vehicles that are being driven. So yes, there's the soccer, parent that needs to get their kids to soccer, but there's also, the parent that's trying to get their tools to a job site, and an EV just doesn't work for them.
You talked about that BC fire on the Coquihalla there. There was that fire they kind of left to burn, and then they decided a few days later that maybe they should fight it.
This one is a baffle. I watched when that fire started, and I thought to myself, it's 100 hectares. Hit it hard. It is way too close to areas that have already been suffered damage with the atmospheric rivers and with the fires previous to that. This is not a place that you want to let burn. We know how fast it can burn in that particular area. I flew over it before they started fighting it, and as I saw those plumes of smoke, in the air, I thought to myself, number one, letting it burn actually puts particles in the air that are not good for our atmosphere. We have one atmosphere. This is like we share the air, and so letting it burn is not good for our lungs. Is not good for the rest of what is breathing, etc. So I definitely disagree with it there. But the comment was when it on the BC wildfire site was, we're letting it burn for ecological reasons and because it is not threatening to persons, structures, or infrastructure. And I literally said to one of my colleagues in meetings the next day, until the wind changes, and just like it did in the fire that was in the Shuswap, just like it did, the wind shifted, and within 6 hours, the Coquihalla was shut down because it was threatening vehicles that were crossing. And it was the vehicles that were crossing that were actually giving information in real time, because our media is shut down and we don't have media that can actually report in live real time anymore. And so another plug for you for Bill C-18 to hit the skids. And honestly, I was so angry. And God bless him, Peter Millibar took to the Twitter waves to try and draw attention to the fact that BC wildfire did not hit this when it was a small fire, and instead let it burn into a very large fire that was now threatening infrastructure, threatening structures, and people were being evacuated. And Ravi Parmar attacked him and said, you're attacking, Minister of Forests, you're attacking the frontline workers. There is nothing about what Peter Millibar was doing that was attacking the workers. He's attacking the policy. And I recently ran into one of my neighbors who used to work for the Ministry of Forests back in the 90s as a deputy minister. And he said, when we changed the forestry policy to not fight fires when they were hitting and to allow the underbrush to overgrow, we did such damage to our forests and such damage to our people in how these fires are handled. And for anyone who says we never used to have this many this much smoke and think that it's just climate change related, it's not. It's actually policy change related. We changed the policies of how we manage our forests, and that is why 25, 30 years later, you see the fires that we have today. We have to change back. We need a comprehensive forestry plan. We are literally burning, 2, 3, 5, 10 times our cut block every single year.
That's definitely a dog whistle by Ravi Parmar, and that's what they go to most of the time. They try to turn it into something else. And I had industry professionals tweeting me very, very upset, saying that we offered to help. We were turned away. We said, "Oh, we don't want your help." And and then they care about the forestry industry, and it's just then to use that dog whistle and saying it's attack. And this is the typical tactics, and this is the stuff that if we had a free and independent media, we could repeal Bill C-18, and we could all get to the podium. Instead of the government-funded media, we would ask the tough questions: is why are you using a dog whistle? Peter Millibar is not attacking the workers; we're attacking the policy, and you're the policy, right? So stop deflecting and trying to turn it into something it's not. And this is what they do. This is what what's her Katarina Chen also said. She's like, oh, it's all about racism. Just like, no, it's not, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So for me, it's definitely, this was an opportunity. I think that Ravi could have risen and really talked about needing to change policy and why we do what we do. Instead, he went after a politician, and it just ended up looking really poorly on Ravi. Ravi is he's way above his depth right now. I mean, he's a 29, 30-year-old who has never had a job outside of politics that is overseeing all of the forestry industry right now, and the ministry. This is a huge portfolio for him, and in this particular case, I think he showed his lack of experience on it.
Yeah, I think the last topic we'll talk about is bail reform, because I think it's a huge topic. And I got to interview, oh, no, it's just like Terry Young, the NDP Minister for Community Safety and Integrated Services, because I did that interview with the BIABC saying that 67% of businesses in British Columbia feel very threatened with what the crime policies are right now, and 1 in 5 likely won't make it a year. Tom Dias shared a letter there that went out, and it had one person in there that said, I think, had 222 files, like RCMP files. Numerous charges, but the one that stuck out for me is 32 failures to appear. You'd think the next time they caught him, they wouldn't let him out, because how many failures to appear in court would you need before they say, well, we're not giving you bail because you don't show up? Like, you don't show up for court. So the question is, how many is necessary? Like, is it the 33rd, the 34th, the 100th? Which one triggers we can't let you out because you don't show up in court?
Yeah, this is, to all of the listeners out there, it does not have to be this way. We desperately need bail reform. We need new legislation, new laws, new additions to the criminal code that actually give and empower judges to enforce the rights of the citizens, and not just protect the rights of the criminals. We have gone way too far. The pendulum has swung, way over, and we are seeing criminals walking our streets and terrorizing our neighborhoods and terrorizing our communities. And, the BIAs are really sounding the alarm bell for what's happening out there on a daily basis. You and I have talked about even, our local issues and what's happening here. You're hearing of more stabbings. You're hearing of more, altercations. The really scary one, the Uber driver just recently who was stabbed by someone who was, not mentally well. We have some huge issues. And we are attempting to have our medical system and our justice system deal with issues that are far beyond in complexity, far beyond in mental health needs, and we need a different caretaking for that as a society, and one that removes them from the rest of society, so that we actually can live and not fear for our lives.
The mayor of Barrie just declared a state of emergency due to crime, lawlessness, and out-of-control homeless encampments. He blames the judges and the rest of the judicial system for not doing their jobs to keep criminals off the streets. Justin Trudeau introduced this, this, like, you just let them out, and that's the same as a Democratic policy, right? This no cash bail. And then we just saw something that is just absolutely horrific in the United States on a train. A young lady stabbed in the neck, and if you have the stomach to watch it, you should, because it should stick in your mind, because we know we need to do something about it. But what's even more shocking in that whole thing, she was stabbed in the neck and she just started crying, and everybody walked away from her. Nobody tried to help her at all. So she died alone, crying, in shock, obviously, and then everybody just walked away from her. And then the legacy media, or the government corrupted media, it has twisted that story, and it is just horrific what that is. And that's a very visual example that it's playing out in Canada, right? Playing out in Canada, and it's the same thing.
And I mean, when you have the heads of the RCMP basically telling the citizens not to resist a robbery, you are telling criminals to go ahead and rob anyone they see fit. And this comes on the heels of, the most horrific sort of incidents where a toddler was sexually assaulted, and, took, hours of surgeries to repair, where you see, people being stabbed and shot. And I mean, and the memes are all over social media, which is like, this is what the Liberals would like us to do when, a criminal comes and it's like, welcome, you're about to rob my home, please. Here's where the valuables are. Here's the the code to my safe. I never thought we would get here. I never thought that this would be where we are. But it's only when citizens say enough is enough, our laws need to change, and we need a different government in order to change it. Now, Carney has said that he is going to look at that bail reform. And he's going to introduce it. He said that he agrees with those changes. If he doesn't get really strong, this is going to be an area of weakness for the Liberals, and another area that Poilievre is going to attack hard. So he basically has one session to bring in some bail reform, and if he doesn't, I think that you're going to see the rest of Canada pretty much up in arms over it.
I think that most people, if you watch that young Ukrainian lady, because that could be your sister, your mother, your brother, or whatever, you know what I mean, somebody, and I think that would be very, because it's the child being raped is obviously bad, but you don't get the visual, right? You don't get the, you know what I mean, you don't see it happening like that one there, and it is just like, it brings tears to your eyes to watch it, and it's just absolutely horrific, and for that reason I think people should watch it, so they attach themselves to it. And then, you know what I mean? Go ahead.
There is one that actually happened in Vancouver, and it was a gentleman who slit the I guess it was the cheek in the end, but it looks like on the video that he was going for the throat, and she just moved her head enough to get her face involved instead. But he was released and found not guilty, and it's absolutely abhorrent to see that these individuals are walking the street. The CCTV cameras caught it from two different angles. There's no doubt in anyone's mind who that person was that actually stabbed that woman, and yet our justice system lets them walk free. Now, I do want to say, and this kind of brings it home to the NDP part, NDP federally, NDP provincially, same party. The NDP federally, when that legislation was going through, that bail reform bill was going through, the NDP actually said it didn't go far enough. They thought it should even be more lackadaisical, and that the criminals deserved more rights. And so that's a scary fact about where our justice system is going.
Well, I mean, we saw in Quebec. Quebec refused money. They refused money because they said that we're not going to judge people because of the color of their skin. We're not going to give leniency on that. And they said we're not taking the money. So that's the Liberal government trying to bribe Quebec to say you need to adhere to this type of justice. And they said, no, thank you. So good on Quebec for that one, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, Quebec kind of beats its own drum for sure. But I mean, if you don't have a society that where people can feel safe in law and order, then you don't really have a society in my mind, right? Like, if you can't, I put a meme up on my LinkedIn, you can go read it there. And it was, the police chief, I think a Toronto police chief, gave the advice. He said, you should put your key fobs at the front door, so when they break into your home, they're easy to access. They'll just take your key fobs and they'll leave, and they won't come and disturb you in your bed. And I put a meme up, and it had two wolfhounds there with the key fobs attached to their collars. And I said, I left the keys at the front door and I attached them to my two dogs there. Feel free to take them and please feed them. They haven't been fed for a while.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But
that is where we're going. And, I mean, again, we all need to pay attention to the laws that are being introduced, because they do have huge ramifications, whether it's the Heritage Act that's being amended here in BC, and, the rights that are being taken away from those that own fee simple lands. And basically, like, Canada's not an intervener on this particular piece of legislation. I don't know what's going to happen there, or the bail reform that happens, or the silencing of our independent media. I mean, we need to pay attention to these different laws that are coming out and understand that they have an effect on our daily life and to our society over time. Whether it's policy in our forestry, or it's our pipelines. We have to pay attention. This all has an effect.
I'm going to beat my own drum here. I believe a lot of these things they get away with because we don't have a free and independent media here in Canada. We have a media that's been corrupted by government. One party has corrupted the media here in Canada because they're not being held to account. If we had a free and independent media, like a lot of the stuff that the Liberals get away with, the NDP get away with here in Canada, they could not get away with in the United States because they have different media, they have different voices, right? Do you know what I mean? Again, Trump will stand in a room and he'll take questions for 3 hours. Show me anywhere, and all media, like 400 journalists, right? Show me anywhere where Mark Carney and the NDP and that will stand in a room and take questions endlessly take questions. And it just doesn't exist. You're taking the questions from the same people, and you notice in Canada, it'll be a CBC reporter right away, and then next it'll be Radio-Canada, and then it'll be CBC, Radio-Canada, maybe the Globe and Mail, but that's it. You don't hear different voices, do you? That's all you hear.
No, it's very well controlled and very well contrived.
And Canada and Quebec represents what? One province of 13, and they seem to own half the microphone all the time. Weird.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a huge blunder, and hopefully one that a change in government at some point will rectify.
We did a really good story on Bill C-18. We interviewed about 4 or 5 actual experts in the industry. You should go read it, share it if you can. We'd appreciate that. We need a free and independent media. Every country does. I'm sure you've seen what was going on in Nepal there.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up.
And they tried to stifle social media, and it doesn't look good for that government there right now.
I think they resigned this morning and stepped down because of the riots and the people that were killed. And the eyewitnesses were basically saying, yeah, government just started shooting into the crowd. So very
17
scary.
youth, I think, were killed. Just no different than Tiananmen Square. I mean, that's a black mark in the world history as well. That's our show for today. It's an hour, almost right on the money today. And again, thank you for your time. And we hope that you enjoy and share this far and wide, because what Renee and I talk about are things that really matter to Canadians.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for listening. And I look forward to your comments.
All right. Cheers. Thank you for watching Now Media.